Now that we've generated the sums of squares total, the sums of squares due to regression, and the sums of squares due to error, what have we actually done? First, let's look at the data and the line that we have generated through that data. We're going to create an XY graph using the length of stay and total charges, and holding down Control, the predicted values for total charges. Now I'll go to the graph function, select XY scatter, and I will finish. This is the graph I've created. The blue dots in the graph represent the actual values for total charges and length of stay. The pink dots represent the predicted values for the blue dots at each successive length of stay. For example, this pink dot represents the projected value for a one-day stay, $1,866. This dot represents the projected value for a two-day stay, and so on, up to this dot, which represents the projected value for a 10-day stay. Now, as I said before, the total sums of squares is the difference between each of these blue dots and the mean of total charges, which is shown here as $35.95. So the difference between each of these blue dots, this one happens to be $47.13, and the mean squared is what is summed to get the total sums of squares. The sums of squares due to regression is the difference between each pink dot and the mean for total charges. And finally, the error sums of squares is the difference between the blue dot and the pink dot. In each case, the blue dot and the pink dot. The blue dot and the pink dot, another blue dot and the same pink dot. To get another perspective on this concept, let's move the graph out of the way, and let's look at the sums of squares total. If we look at the sums of squares total, and let's concentrate on this extreme length of stay of 10 days. Part of what is in the sums of squares total is the difference between 8769 and 3595 squared, approximately 5,000 squared. What is in the sums of squares due to regression is the difference between the predicted value for a 10-day stay, 9102, and the mean squared. So this is approximately $4,500 that contributes to the sums of squares due to regression. And what is in the sums of squares error is the difference between the 9102 projected value for a 10-day stay and the 8769 actual value for a one-day stay. To take this one step further, we will now calculate what is known as R square. And we'll put it here as R hat 2, R squared. The R square is the proportion of the total variance that can be accounted for by length of stay. That is, the proportion of the total variance that is contained in the sums of squares due to regression. So in this case, the R square is equal to 61 million divided by 78 million, and the result is essentially 78%. In other words, we've accounted for 78% of the variance in total charges by using the variable length of stay.